Welcome back. Brian Johannes joins us now here on 365 Sports, an NFL Draft Analyst for the Huddle Report. And Brian, on your Twitter page, you are proudly an NFL draft geek. So the Senior Bowl, where do you grade things like the Senior Bowl in your fandom or your coverage of the NFL Draft?
Yeah, it's definitely out there. Just because it's an opportunity for a lot of these top prospects, especially some of those smaller school guys, to really go against each other and see. It's one thing for a guy like Cody Mock from North Dakota State to watch him on tape, but to see him go up against guys from schools like Alabama and some of these Power 5 schools. So it's got a lot of great things to them. You're seeing them do specific things, but it's always just a piece of the puzzle.
So who jumped out at you this week at the Senior Bowl of somebody who's a mover or somebody who kind of confirmed maybe what you already thought about them?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of guys. The offensive tackle, Osiris from Florida, he was a guy that came to Louisiana Lafayette, transferred up. Osiris Torrance, he's a guy that really kind of stood out, kind of owned it. Kind of showed that he belonged. You know, he did it in the SEC, but he was another guy that kind of just was really out there. I really liked Will Montgomery. He's been a guy that I've always kind of liked along the way, a pass rusher out of Iowa State. Another guy that kind of maybe a little bit smaller, but he really had a good time out there. And then even Ohio State offensive tackle DeJuan Jones is another guy. When he was out there, he's massive, 6'8". He's got like an 80-something inch wingspan, and usually a guy that big doesn't move that well. But he kind of shut down the edge, and so that was another guy that kind of impressed me there.
Brian, what was the situation with Siaki Ika, the big nose tackle out of Baylor? Was advertised for the game, did not participate from what I could gather. What was the kind of scuttlebutt surrounding him?
You know, I didn't really hear anything about him. I wasn't down there. That's still a bucket list thing for me. But yeah, it was a name that you just really didn't hear much about, and I don't know, just why it wasn't talked about more, I guess.
Brian, what is your assessment of him from what you've seen on film?
Yeah, he's definitely your prototypical nose tackle in the NFL. Just massive body. He reminds me a lot of some of the guys that have come out lately. We've got guys like Vita Vea and, Danny Shelton. There were these guys that are just massive. You know, we're looking at 6'4", 6'5", 340, 350 pounds, straight line athlete. You know, I loved, his power, his ability to just, move the pocket. Got that burst, the agility is not there. That's what kind of limits him a little bit, the ability to kind of make those lateral moves. But he's got the power. He's got that straight line burst. He's got a great effort. I mean, he's a guy that I think is solidified himself. He's like a second round pick. That's his floor. But a team looking to really kind of improve their run defense, I wasn't shocked if he went in that late first round.
The quarterbacks are obviously, the hot topic as they are every year, especially knowing what the Texans could be eyeing there with Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud, I guess, potentially whoever. But that other level of quarterbacks, Jake Haener, obviously had a good showing there out of Fresno State at the Senior Bowl. What are your thoughts on him, and kind of where does he fall in terms of the overall quarterback pecking order in your mind, and who else potentially stood out as far as that group goes?
Yeah, it's not, other than your top four guys, it's kind of a big drop off. And like you said, Haener was probably the best at the Senior Bowl. Just a solid, backup level guy. Just wasn't, that impressive a group. Max Duggan was, a good college quarterback. Just don't know if he has the traits to be, more than kind of a backup in the NFL. So I would say Haener is definitely, he's in that second tier of group. You look at him and Ado O'Connell from Purdue. You got Hendon Hooker from Tennessee, Tanner McKee from Stanford. those guys are kind of all in that kind of middle group. And a guy like Hayner was able to go to the Senior Bowl and get to showcase himself and meet these teams, work with these NFL coaches, and that could really benefit him and have him go in maybe that late day 2, early day 3 range.
Brian, were there guys that disappointed, or guys that you think are maybe a little too overrated right now?
One guy that I just didn't really see much from, and I know he gets mocked on a fairly regular basis, is Andre Carter from Army. I know it's a great story, a guy that's at the service academy and potential high round pick. He's big, 6'6", 260 pounds. I just never really saw. I saw just a raw athlete, and just never. You see the athleticism, but if I'm going to be drafting someone in the first round at a pass rusher, I want to see a little bit more development. And part of that's because he's coming from Army, but that's one guy that was talked about coming in, and I just didn't really live up to the hype, I guess.
Brian, what do you think of the top level quarterbacks? How would you rank them? Is it Young, Levis, Stroud? Richardson's pretty much everybody's fourth because he's mostly on potential and not necessarily the tape. But where do you rank those top 3?
Yeah, definitely Young, Levis, and Stroud in that order. I have them pretty close. I think I have the same grade on Bryce Young as I do Will Levis. It's a solid group of 3. It's just you don't have that elite guy. You don't have a Trevor Lawrence. You don't have a Joe Burrow. I mean, there was all that talk of would the Bears trade Justin Fields. I don't think any of these guys were better than Justin Fields coming out. And that doesn't mean they're not going to be good. Bryce Young is my top guy, but, there's a chance he's 5'9", 5'10", under 200 pounds. And that's going to scare some teams off. And where you have Will Levis, who, is big, he's got a strong arm, he's athletic, but he was inconsistent. So there's a lot of excitement, but there's a lot of big question marks surrounding all 3 of those guys.
Do you like the maybe at the overall high, like Bijan Robinson, Devin A-Chain, Jahmyr Gibbs would be the top 3? What do you think about the running back class overall?
Yeah, Bijan Robinson is probably the best running back we've had come out since Saquon Barkley. But with running backs, it's not a devaluing the position. It's just you can get running back at any point in the draft, and so that's going to be the fascinating thing for me about Bijan Robinson is he's probably one of the 10 best players in this draft class, but I have no idea where he's going to go. I mean, it's still early February, but trying to pick where a running back like him is going to go, he might shock and go in the top 10, or I wouldn't be surprised if he fell into the late 20s. So, and then after that, you just got a lot of guys that are, really solid but fit a certain specific skill set.
I know you cover the Titans as well. What do you think about? They're an interesting team in this, that they're not like awash in picks like the Texans are in their own division. The Texans and Colts both have to get quarterbacks. You could make an argument that the Titans do as well, but where do they fall in they have to do this in this draft with Rand Carthon, their new GM?
Yeah, for a team that nearly made the playoffs and was the number 1 seed 2 years ago, they've got some big holes. And I think one of those is at quarterback. It's, are they going to run it back with Ryan Tannehill? Or, they took Malik Willis last year in the 3rd round, and he started a few games but really struggled and looks like he's, still a pretty big work in progress. So picking at 11, I mean, they're in that striking zone that they could potentially move up and nab one of these quarterbacks. Offensive line is a huge issue. Taylor Lewan, the starting left tackle, hasn't played a full season. The last couple of years, they could replace him. I really think they need to add some explosiveness to that offense. Traylon Burks, their first round pick last year, looks like he has the potential to be good, but they just need some more speed. And they're very reliant on Derrick Henry, but they could use some additional team speed. So I think receiver, if they don't move up to get a quarterback, I think tackle or receiver are 2 areas to kind of keep an eye on.
If you could have one team's lot of picks, who would it be?
Well, the easy thing would be to be the Bears because you have that number 1 pick.
Mm-hmm.
I like Houston. Houston's got 2 and 12, so you're right in that striking zone to potentially get, one, if not the top quarterback or the next best quarterback. But then you also have that pick at 12, and you're going to get one of the better position players in this draft. And most teams don't have 32 first-round graded players. They usually have, anywhere from 14 to 20. So you're getting 2 of those probably true first-round picks. And, I mean, that pick at 12, we've seen guys like Rashawn Slater for the Chargers. He was considered by many to be the best tackle in that class, and he falls all the way out of the top 10. So that pick 12 is definitely a good spot to be sitting at as well.
Craig, anything? Brian, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. We'll be back in touch throughout the draft and see as this thing develops. We get into workouts and combine and all that. But certainly appreciate your thoughts on the Senior Bowl. Brian Johannes, follow him on Twitter. NFL Draft Analyst also does some stuff. He's got YouTube and all that as well. So go find Brian Johannes. And Brian, thanks for hopping on today.